Really?
Yeah,
They're telling you to get a booster now?
yeah, because it's been,
Yeah, I
it's
heard.
been half a century since we
Right,
last
well,
had
I've
a
heard it's on the
booster.
rise, yeah.
So,
Maybe it was R or something, it has,
I'll take this home and
it
put
has
it
whooping
on
cough
the
in
table.
it.
Yeah, the
Oh,
pertussis,
the
right?
DPT one,
Why
or
that's not
actually-
whooping cough.
Yeah, I have
They call
to,
it
I think
something
I've got to do
different now.
that one too. And those I never react well.
we are.
I don't,
Did anyone else say they want to come inside Bill?
Do what?
Crystal is out of the country on vacation, so she won't be here.
Oh, did she let,
I'm gonna
did she
go
let
ahead.
Karen and Dave know? Because
Oh.
that's the whole, apparently it's not.
You guys are killing me. You're killing me.
I've gotten too comfortable with you, Karen, and now I can.
So what-
It was on the email.
What
It did say the email
I
that came.
know you're getting emails because
Email.
I have interacted with
Yeah,
you.
Crystal's not
via-
looking at email.
I emailed that the packet was attached to
Oh,
for
that
this
could be the
meeting.
problem, because I was,
She ignores,
never mind.
She ignores email.
Card.
Sometimes I
Okay.
just get so
Can we
many
ignores
that.
the
Can we put Bill
Well-
Kelly and the other attorney up on the agenda so they don't wait, so we're not.
Yeah, we wanna
Just get
move
this.
number 5 up.
Yeah, the number one if we can, or wherever it fits, like the
Yeah.
earliest in the agenda.
We've been making
Yeah, I
suffer
was
through
gonna,
the whole.
I was gonna ask, if Bill Kelly had reviewed all of that stuff, because I started going through the contract and it was like,
Yeah, and that was why I asked him to be here, so that you guys can like ask us, because he reviewed it all. He's reviewed it all once for Camden, for the wastewater treatment plant, and so,
yeah, I was thinking about it and I couldn't remember. I knew he was Camden's attorney and he's our town attorney. But I couldn't remember if he was,
well, he's your attorney too.
yeah, so,
Got a lot
Yeah.
going on.
we all piggyback on Camden.
yeah, right here.
When you
Camden
guys,
pays for
when it's,
stuff, Camden can pay for stuff and then Bill's done the research and can tell us the results.
well, it helps you guys.
I mean, Bill's pretty good. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
shoot, he can hear us.
That's not why we have him. We've had Bill for quite a
I
while,
like how
but
we're long and skinny.
Hold on just a second, let me make it so I can see the other people instead of us.
Yeah, you need to bring that there.
Oh, yeah, I feel pretty clear about how
You feel pretty clear about it?
I feel it, yes.
must not have.
Michael Thompson should come from Rockport. Plus Bill's on video, can you vote on video?
Bill.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta make Bill Kelly a panelist too, or have it in webinar mode.
There is a promotion.
See if he accepts. Oh, very good. Okay, and then we're gonna put this on gallery,
This also should be.
There he is.
and then
Hi,
Tim,
Bill.
Tim just came in here.
Well, not to split hairs, but if his camera's not on, how do we know it's really him? And that's all I know.
Somebody might recognize his voice.
Just wanna make sure we've got a quorum here before we.
How many?
You do. Who we got for Rockport?
Bill Bowe from
Bill
Rockport.
Lowe, there he is, right there. Hey, Bill.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good evening.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay,
Yeah.
So we do have a quorum.
The evening kills me.
I had to run down to Baltimore at the last minute on Sunday, so I'm down here. So I appreciate having the Zoom.
Great, is Michael, or should we be expecting Michael, or?
I haven't heard otherwise, but that's possible. So if we've got a quorum, we should get started.
Oh, yeah, usually the way it works is that the other, if two people from the town aren't there, then the one that is gets both the votes.
Yeah.
Raise both hands, perfect.
Okay, so we do have a quorum, so let's get going. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending the Midco Solid Waste Corporation Board of Directors meeting. It's October 23rd, 2024 at 6:37 p.m. First, I would like to know if the board members have any issue with moving up Item number 5 on the agenda, it's an action item. The topic is the PFAS treatment and contamination. Does any of the board members have any problem with me moving that item to number 1?
None at all.
We're all set? Okay, let's bring that to number 1. So the first item on the agenda is, I mentioned action item to enter into a contractual agreement with SL Environmental Law Group to recover future PFAS or PFAS treatment and contamination costs. Cost recovery would be part of a combined litigation effort by SL Environmental Law Group. Dave, do you have a brief description or whatever you'd like to say on that before we turn it over to the representative from SL Environmental?
Yeah, so, so everybody knows that PFAS is kind of an up-and-coming pollutant that's, you know, pretty much in every media out there, and mostly it's in wastewater, it's in our leachate, it's in all the manufactured goods that have fire retardant in it. It's just almost in everything out there. And they have found that it has some pretty serious health issues associated with it. And there's a lot of like up and coming rulemaking that's happening with regarding how are you going to treat PFAS, or if you're going to treat PFAS, and they're setting limits. So the DEP at both the wastewater treatment facility and at Midco Solid Waste are having us sample for this, and we know we have a high concentration of it at the landfill. And we send all our leachate to the wastewater treatment facility, which is also receiving PFAS through other locations, but the major source is probably Midcoast. And the way a lot of wastewater treatment facilities work is they have usually what they'll do is they'll get limits on their permit, which will then in essence require us to do probably pre-treat for PFAS. And that can get really expensive. So, you know, my personal opinion is I feel like, you know, the polluters are responsible for any of the costs associated with this pollutant. And I had approached Bill Kelly originally about looking into this, and we were thinking about, you know, possibly the state was going to be doing something, but they really weren't acting on it. And I was approached by a person from the it's like a rural water of Maine, up in Massachusetts, and he was telling me about how they had successfully litigated the PFAS pollutant for drinking water, and this company, LS Environmental, was the attorneys and the law firm that was representing, and wanted to know if there was any interest in Camden's wastewater treatment facility participating in this claim. And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. And I started talking about how, you know, we're kind of like Siamese twins with Midcoast. You know, our treatment plant is tied together, but you know, they're the source. And I was asking if we can include Midcoast in this. So that's kind of the genesis of it all. And then Ken and I met, and Allison was actually there. She met because it was part of like more of the Camden piece, but also with regarding Midcoast. And then we brought it to Bill Kelly to review, and Bill Kelly met with Ken. We talked about, you know, the approach and different things, and then we presented it to the board, the select board in Camden. They voted to approve it, and here we are. This is the next step for Midcoast to be included in it also. And I'll let Ken maybe explain it. He's much better explaining this whole thing than I am, but in a perfect world, you know, they would litigate against the polluter would be found that they were somewhat liable for the pollutant and whatever costs associated with treating or disposing or eliminating or remediating, we would get funds for that, and it would help the facility with dealing with this contaminant. So that's pretty much what it is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Ken, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Thank you for coming in for us.
Oh, don't hear.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's just,
There you go.
It's my fault. Thanks for having me tonight. Nice to see everybody. I'm Ken Sansone from SL Environmental Law Group. I'm joining you from Concord, New Hampshire, which is where I live. And my firm is a firm where all we do is represent utilities, public agencies in cases where they're dealing with a contaminant and having to expend money to comply with regulatory mandates around that contaminant. And we're able to identify the source of that contaminant, typically products that were made some distance away from the communities that we're working with by a manufacturer, that were brought into that community one way or another and used or disposed of in the ordinary course. And that process ended up contaminating client resources. And oftentimes those resources for a drinking water supply, sometimes they're the biosolids, the effluent from a wastewater treatment plant. And that's how we ended up talking to Dave about the situation with the wastewater treatment plant in Camden, and that a lot of the PFAS there, I've come to understand that they're seeing is not surprisingly coming from landfill leachate from your facility. And again, that's not surprising because as Dave alluded to, PFAS was used in thousands of different consumer products, clothing, cookware, food packaging, cosmetics, cleaning products, and all of that, or PFAS that can kind of slough off of that ends up going down the drains in people's homes and ends up in wastewater, and then ends up getting thrown out with their garbage and ends up in landfill. And so agencies like yours are being forced to deal with a problem that you had no role in creating. And on the other hand, the manufacturers of these products are basically only a few different companies, really just 3M, who invented these products. It was the only one who made PFAS for about 30 or 40 years until DuPont started to get into the market in the late 1990s, and they made compounds that many other manufacturers used to make other products of the kinds that I mentioned earlier. So about 7 or 8 years ago, my firm started representing drinking water suppliers and bringing lawsuits against these manufacturers. All these cases, because many of them were getting filed in different parts of the country, ended up getting consolidated into the single proceeding known as a multi-district litigation, or MDL. The MDL has more or less every case any drinking water cases, but also cases brought by private well owners, individuals like firefighters and others who have worked with PFAS-containing products and gotten sick and have personal injury claims, claims for soil contamination, claims by wastewater operators, many different kinds of claims. And we worked on the drinking water claims first. And as a result of that, we were able to get into place 4 now large class action settlements with some of the manufacturers, including 3M and DuPont. And now our work on these drinking water cases is coming to an end, and we're starting to take a closer look at other kinds of impacts that public agencies are dealing with from PFAS, and really, and this is particularly true in the state of Maine, those are wastewater impacts. Maine has really taken the lead in trying to prevent the spread of PFAS from wastewater treatment facilities. Maine has banned the land application of biosolids that are generated by wastewater treatment plants. That's led to significant additional operational costs for these agencies. My firm is already working with close to 8, I think by now, other agencies in Maine who have hired us to deal with PFAS in their wastewater, and we also represented probably about an equal number of drinking water suppliers in Maine in dealing with their PFAS issues. And what we are proposing to do on behalf of both the town of Camden and Midcoast is to file a lawsuit against these manufacturers that would claim that these products were defective, principally because the people using them were not warned of the environmental and public health consequences of the PFAS in these products. And as a result of that, there are going to be some remediation costs that, Midcoast and or Camden are going to have to incur in all likelihood at some point to try to reduce the concentrations of PFAS that are coming from the treatment plant. And again, ultimately, my understanding is that PFAS is originating, well, not originating, but it's originating in the products it's getting in the leachate in your landfill and ending up down at the plant in Camden. And we would try to, through this lawsuit, as Dave mentioned, recover as much as we can of those remediation costs, whether they're costs that you've already incurred at the time we're able to resolve the lawsuit, or there are costs that you anticipate incurring in the future. What will happen? We file this case in the multi-district litigation. We're pretty confident that at some point we're going to start working in earnest on these other kinds of cases now that we're finishing up on the drinking water cases. We would likely just pick a handful of these cases kind of to serve as test cases. All the other cases that were filed would sort of be taking a wait and see approach with what happened with those other cases. And that would sort of let us know the progress on those other cases, whether we would be able to enter into some sort of global settlement like we did with drinking water, or whether we would have to litigate and take to trial individual cases. But we would be prepared to handle your case whichever way things end up breaking. What my firm does is take these cases up to trial and through trial if necessary. I think a much more likely outcome here, because of the scale of these problems over PFAS, is that we would be able to get some sort of global settlement together, and ultimately would be up to you as the board here, and of course the Camden Board of Selectmen, whether to agree to participate in that settlement or basically continue fighting, and we would take our marching orders from you. How we handle these cases, and this is all in the legal services agreement that I think you've seen. We work on a contingency fee basis, so we just get a percentage of whatever we're able to recover on your behalf. If for some reason the things don't work out and we don't recover anything, then we don't get paid anything. If we get to the point in the case when we have to start spending money on costs like expert witnesses or depositions or the like, we would also pay all of those costs in the first instance to be reimbursed out of any recovery if there is one. And again, if there isn't one, we would end up on the hook for those costs. So really the downside financial risk to your agency is nil. In terms of the agreement that's been presented, they are identical to the final agreement that we entered into with Camden. This is an agreement, as Dave mentioned, that Bill and I went through about a month or so ago in some detail, and I think I was able to address all of his concerns, and that's how we were able to get it finalized for Camden. Again, what you've seen is the results of that effort. It's identical to the one that Camden entered into. So that's, I think, really the high-level summary. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has about any of this.
Anybody got any questions at this time? For Ken?
I do. I've got a couple of questions.
Sure. Go ahead, Bill.
All right. One question on the agreement itself that I wasn't quite sure was, there was a section in here on inclusions as far as litigation services. And there was a part B in there that I couldn't tell if you were representing us, even in the instance of like a third party claim that gets filed against us independent of all this, or am I just reading that wrong?
Yeah, the way that's set up, and it is a little confusing potentially, is those are examples of the kind of work that you're not hiring us to do. So we are not being hired to defend third-party claims against you.
Fair enough. I kind of figured as much, but I wasn't quite sure. From a technical perspective, how much do you envision of looking at the specificity of our issues, or for that matter, Camden's issues, as opposed to the tens of thousands of these claims that are hitting these folks, I don't know, every week? So in other words, are we just a number two? In other words, we've got, 1,000 parts per trillion and we pump 50 gallons a minute, so we're in that bucket. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle it, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to understand the technical side of it, what you would be doing.
So I don't know. And I think what we're prepared to do is handle it either way. So what we saw with the drinking water settlements was, a little bit of rough justice, which is what you'd expect when you have a settlement that applies to every public water system in the country. And ultimately, what those settlements came down to was calculating payments, or really pro rata shares of the settlement fund, based on the kind of factors that you just mentioned. How high were your PFAS concentrations? You had to look at every source individually, and then how big is that source? Is it a well that pumps 250 GPM? Is it a well that pumps 1,000 GPM? Is it a surface water treatment plant that does 10,000 GPM? And that process generated the payouts, or will generate the payouts. That's all still being calculated by a court-appointed claims administrator. And so we ended up taking all of our clients through that process. It was actually fairly complicated. There are rules about if you have higher concentrations in the future, if you have detections in the future where you don't have them now, and you have to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. And we went through that whole process. So I guess I would say that while there was this one-size-fits-all process, navigating it was definitely dependent on every individual client circumstances. And I think if you spoke with some of the drinking water systems we represented in Maine or elsewhere, that's what they would tell you. A lot of these systems, of course, hired us before we knew there were going to be settlements or what they were going to be. So we didn't necessarily know. We were just agreeing, as we're agreeing to do with you, to file a lawsuit and try to get it to the best conclusion that you were satisfied with. And so that's for almost all of our drinking water clients, that ended up being those settlements. I don't know whether we're going to have mass settlements like that for cases like this. I think it's a little more challenging, and it sort of depends on how the regulatory environment develops. I think in Maine, and that's why I think a lot of wastewater agencies in Maine have gone ahead and filed these lawsuits. It's a little simpler. You know that you can't land apply your biosolids anymore. It's easy to figure out what the costs are that were associated with that, and that's what your claim is going to look like. But of course, we're still waiting for further regulations, potentially for PFAS concentrations in treated wastewater discharges, potentially for what you might be able to have in your landfill leachate. So I think we're going to have to kind of work on parallel tracks. These regulations are going to be developing while your case is basically pending. And so the sort of talk all that through. So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but like any lawyer would say, it depends. But I think we're prepared to handle whichever situation arises. And again, ultimately, if there are mass settlements, it's going to be up to you. And we'll, of course, give you advice on this, whether you want to go that route or not.
Sure. It's sort of like Superfund allocation in reverse. But so, because we're getting paid instead of paying, right? So the next question that sort of falls from that is, from a technical perspective, when you talk about flow rates and concentrations and distribution and cost in the future to treat the water, blah, 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 we're at the very front end of beginning to understand what our potential financial liability is. So the question I have for you in this process, how far do we need to go to further define that liability? Or is that something you're going to do on behalf of us and presumably the rest of your clients in this same bucket?
So we are definitely going to take the laboring oar on that. We will need to work with staff in getting information about your facilities and your testing results and so on and so forth. But this is something that my firm has done many, many times in cases that we've brought. We work usually with a consulting engineer or multiple consulting engineers that we handle who are familiar with these kinds of treatment and remediation issues. And then we figure out what the overall expense is going to be. Again, if any capital improvements are necessary, what those are going to cost. And then if there are going to be ongoing maintenance and operational costs for whatever that treatment methodology might be. We also figure out what that is. So yeah, that will be part of our job if we get to that point, is figuring out, okay, this is what, working, getting information from your staff, having conversations with our consultants, we think this is going to cost you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. That's all I've got, so.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Allison?
Yeah, and this doesn't, it's not like I need to know this in order to sign an agreement, but just since we have you, I'm curious, does this process benefit from the state setting a standard sooner rather than later, or EPA setting a standard for wastewater effluent? I know that's sort of what helped with the drinking water situation. And so that would be one question. And then if there's any benefit to, in the interim, as we're waiting for a national standard or a state standard, for Camden to set a pre-treatment requirement that would then, I mean, that's something that we may end up just doing anyway because of public concern, but then that would allow Midcoast to demonstrate, damages, I suppose you could say, in a way that's more finite than we can right now.
So one rule that I really try to follow in all of these cases is never to tell my client how they should operate and what standards they should follow. I view my job, my role, as my client makes those operational decisions. There are going to be costs associated with those, and it's my job to try to, I guess, do things, convince a jury, if we get to that point, that that was reasonable, and then make sure that we recover as many of those costs as we can as a result through the lawsuit. And so I would be,
I mean, that makes sense.
yeah. So I
think we're already looking at treatment of our leachate here because, well, for two reasons, because Camden has too much of it to begin with. And then more specifically, as we're finding it's becoming more known, the concentrations in our leachate, and people are becoming more aware of the dangers of PFAS, it's less and less popular to have more of that coming over to Camden. And so there's, as we're looking at our options for treating leachate and, other discharge opportunities, we really have to be able to tell the public. Whereas before we were able to say, we are not violating any primary drinking water standards. Our leachate really isn't very bad. We're in a really good situation. And now all of a sudden, as the state we have to be testing for PFAS, as is understandable, we have this real kind of liability and concern, that red flag for everybody that, I mean, really is in a very different way almost than Camden right now. I mean, Camden has all the same problems as everybody else, but these landfills have an even bigger problem sort of more immediately, I think.
Right.
Are you representing other landfills or like, are we, how would it potentially be broken up into different groups or?
Yeah, so in Maine, we're not representing any other landfill operators right now, at least not active landfill operators. We are representing a number of municipalities across the country that have concerns about landfills and other elements of their solid waste disposal operations, composting facilities are another big one that are going to
Because
be.
there are a couple landfills in Maine, or at least one landfill in Maine that already is required to treat for PFAS. I'm wondering what, anyway, that's all sort of side note stuff, but this all sounds great, and thank you for being here and for doing this, and I'm definitely supportive. I don't know if Bill, I'd be curious just to maybe hear from Bill also. It was helpful to hear from him a little bit in Camden.
Which
Okay.
bill?
It was great to hear from you, Bill, too, but this, Bill Kelly is always nice to hear from, I think.
I agree.
Well, if there aren't any more questions for Ken, I think we'd like to hear from our attorney, Bill. You've obviously looked at this numerous times, and are there any changes that need to be made to this to fit our situation? Or are you good with the way this is, or what do you think?
Hi, good evening, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. No, yes, in answer to directly answer your question, I think it's good to go. I think, as Allison just said, it's a great opportunity. This is very specialized stuff. I don't know if Ken wants to just touch on this in a second, but the question that Bill had about, is this too early? Do we know enough about our damages was sort of the gist of his question. And Ken had discussed with us the reason why getting this process started early is a benefit. So he could perhaps just touch on that in a minute. I do want to just mention one thing, though, to give you a little bit of comfort. With regard to the third-party issues, if any of these companies that Ken pursues, and if they have to go into litigation or into the mass litigation process, counterclaim or cross-claim against Camden, that's part of what they do. They're going to be involved in that process. So those aren't, it isn't like we have to get a separate attorney when somebody decides to file a counterclaim. And even as the agreement reads, even a third-party claim that arises out of the legal action, they will defend. So it's as broad a language as I think you can expect to have with a reasonable agreement. It's a very detailed agreement. We really vetted this quite a bit. Ken, myself, Dave, and Audra spent almost an hour and a half going through this in great detail. And Ken was very responsive to make all the changes that I requested. So I think it's a great opportunity. In a way, you're lucky that Dave St. Laurent had the foresight to get Ken his attention and get involved with this. I don't see any downside.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much, Bill. Are there any questions for Bill?
No,
Yeah, I
that's-
think the part that I imagine that Bill's referring to that Ken might want to talk about in terms of why we might be in a hurry or wouldn't want to wait, that was helpful to hear in Camden.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is a question that I get a lot. And I think there are a couple of reasons why acting sooner than later is the better approach here. First of all, and I already said this, I don't know necessarily what the specifics or even the generalities of a settlement over PFAS in a landfill or over PFAS in a wastewater treatment plant could look like. But there was a lot of work that was put into the drinking water settlements, and a very important feature of the drinking water settlements was to have a bonus, so to speak, for the agencies that had filed lawsuits, as opposed to sitting back and letting everybody else just sort of do the work for them. And the result of that was that our water system clients who were more proactive about this and had filed lawsuits are in some cases going to be getting 25% more under the settlements. And these are settlements that are paying these water systems millions, or in some cases tens of millions of dollars more than an identically situated system. So I think the potential for a similar structure in any mass settlement we saw for landfills or wastewater treatment plants is a reason to act sooner. I also think that you always have to be concerned in cases like this over potential statute of limitations problems. Maine has a very generous statute of limitations, 6 years for claims like this, but you best believe, and I've dealt with these defendants and these manufacturers in these cases for 10 years now, about they're going to try to make any statute of limitations argument that they can. And so acting sooner potentially undercuts those kinds of arguments. And I guess on the other side of the coin, there's not really much to be gained by waiting. I think I touched on this already. It's going to take some time to work these cases up and try to resolve them. And while we're doing that, the regulations are going to be developing. So I think we're basically going to have 2 trains, a litigation train and a regulatory train, that hopefully are arriving at the station at or near the same time. For that reason, I definitely think it's better to act sooner than later.
And there's a very real risk that they could run out of money at some point, right?
Yes, there's also that we could end up in a bankruptcy process. Now, I think that's unlikely when it comes to 3M and DuPont, but it's certainly a risk. 3M has said that it wants to put this very sordid episode from its corporate past behind it. And it wants to try to resolve all these claims and move on. And it believes it can do so without becoming insolvent. But of course, liabilities for PFAS are not the only factor that affects 3M's bottom line. And 3M is not an enormous company along the lines of something like Apple. It's only worth about $50 billion. So it is another reason to act sooner than later. You'd have a better chance at priority if we ended up in a bankruptcy situation. We have already seen, and in fact, I think this hit the news earlier today, one of the manufacturers of the firefighting foam that contained PFAS did file bankruptcy about 1.5 years ago. And just today, there's the beginnings of a settlement of that bankruptcy that have to do with some complicated intracorporate liabilities. But that certainly has slowed things down, and the recoveries out of that are going to be significantly less than the recoveries from the solvent defendants. So that's another reason not to wait, for sure.
And I 100% agree with that sentiment.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to move forward on this.
I move that we enter into a contractual agreement with SL Environmental Law Group to recover future PFAS treatment and contamination costs.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion on this before we put it to vote? No? Bill, you okay? You good? All those in favor? Looks like it's 100% of the people attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you for the
Bill
opportunity. And we very much look forward to working with you on this, and we'll get the agreement signed and we'll get moving.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Good night, folks.
Good night. Thank you both.
Who needs to sign that agreement?
Bill, can you stick around?
Yeah,
Who should sign the agreement? That was
Do
my
we
question.
authorize Dave to sign it, or is it?
you could, sure. I'm just looking at the signature page. Why don't you guys just vote to authorize the manager to sign it?
Okay, so we need to redo that.
Well, no, we'll do a second one.
Just add a motion.
It's only one name right now. It just says Midco Solid Waste.
Right.
So,
Okay, I'll entertain a second motion to.
I think Robin's got it.
Well, I was gonna,
Go ahead.
right, motion for Dave to sign on behalf of New Midcoast Solid Waste Corporation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank
Bill.
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Okay, that's a very,
That's a big
very
one.
informative. Thank you
That's a big
for
one.
getting ahead of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, I think
Good
that,
catch.
that one's gonna pay off.
Yep.
I get good vibe on that.
That is good.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's
next.
a great movie called Has anyone seen Dark Waters?
You mentioned that last
No.
time and I haven't yet.
It's worth it.
Oh, yeah, what you, Allison, is this firm, they're a partner with the guy that was in that movie.
Mhm. Yeah, which makes it sound like kind of like
You gotta watch,
Hollywoodish, but it really,
you gotta watch the movie.
they've been
It's
working on
good.
this
It's a good
for
movie.
20 years, trying to get the
Dark Waters.
EPA to set a standard. There's so much evidence that they knew this was a problem and it's just taken
Does that
forever.
sound like the same song, new verse?
Yes, yes. I thought you
You
said
know.
Samsung at first, so that,
No.
no, Samsung is involved in that, but, yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda, review and approval of the August 28, 2024 meeting minutes. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
I have one
Oh,
thing that I think it's a question. I don't know whether in item 4, the fee schedule review, it's got McKellar and Robinson seconding. Can you have 2 seconds? Or was it supposed to say
Maybe it was
that
a tie.
McKellar motioned? And
Oh, yeah, probably, good point.
I don't
I
see
think
any.
maybe I'll.
Oh, no, Smith moved to accept.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it was just a tie. That's an okay thing.
I'm joking, I'm
I
joking, no, I
think
think it
Oh.
really just needs to be one, maybe that's on the side.
yeah. And there was one place in the minutes where Robinson was typed with 2 B's instead of 1. And I can't, I'm having ineptitude when it comes to marking up PDFs so that I can actually go back.
If you do Control F, it's not finding it.
Uh,
If you do Control F and just type ROBBI.
No, what I've been, there
There
it
it
is.
is,
It's on
yeah.
page 4 after Chair Laddie entertained a motion. And then I found 2 other typos, but I think they were both in your report, Dave. And they were not substantive, they were just
Right.
silly typos.
Okay,
Does that matter, or can you just use a pen and strike it out?
I think that's, yes. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That passed. No abstentions. Next item on the agenda, facilities manager report. We had the manager's report in the packet. Dave, do you have anything you want to add to that, or?
no, just something more along the lines of it. I mean, I can say that I think that the North Quarry pumping is working well.
Good.
We're still getting ready to develop the South Quarry well, at the end of the month. One of the things that's not on the manager's report, and it's, I don't know if this is the right place to discuss it. It's about talking about, committees coming up. But maybe you can bring that up at
I think what we'll do is just tell everybody that we're gonna send out a list of the committees and vacancies.
so we have it right here.
Okay,
And one of the things is, I know that we talked about not having a meeting, an actual board meeting each time. We do more like a meeting, a workshop and a meeting. So kind of an idea I was thinking maybe is we could have a goal setting. The next meeting would be a goal setting workshop.
yeah,
And then we could tie it into the committees. So, because we could talk about, I could talk about some of the things I think are needed to be done as big items. You folks can talk about things that you think are of concerns for the towns. And then we could write those things down and then probably, that'll help us with determining committees and assignments.
and I like that idea. Our finance committee is gonna need members for budget season. my,
Is that coming up again?
and that's that's coming up.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking our next meeting should be a meeting where we can vote instead of a workshop. Thank you.
So we can have a board meeting, that's a kind of a board meeting workshop? Can we do that?
We can, the first part of it can be a meeting and then we can adjourn and go into a workshop.
Yeah, it can be just a short meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
You okay?
I am, yeah, I just.
Her face
I
is
think-
very expressive, yeah.
The eyes were going.
The committee, the formality of the committees and whether that demands a vote, I think it's sort of low stakes, and that it is more important to develop a general idea of the types of things that are gonna be worked on, and then, I mean, there's no reason we can't formally vote on the committees, but I think it's what I've seen happen in the past sometimes, it's like, oh, who's on this committee and this committee, and then without the whole
Knowing what the
board
committees
talking
do.
more about what we agree that each committee sort of should be working on. The finance committee, you're right, is clear, and it's really fun. It's a great committee to be on for anybody.
Go for it.
Or we can,
yeah, but-
we could choose the finance committee, well, we don't have enough people here, probably not.
It would be
Yeah.
good to get a sense of what everybody's interested in, and I like how in the past we've done the goal setting closer to the beginning so that we get to hear what everybody's interested in working on.
What?
The beginning of the term,
Okay.
you know, the class, what are we, our
Cohort.
right, the beginning of the year for us,
Mhm.
right, we just got a bunch of
That's
new
why I was
people.
thinking if everybody got one of these and had the 30 days to consider what they felt.
But we haven't
They want
decided what
people.
each committee should do. Like, I think we should hear that the union contract's coming up, and that'll be. Dave will want to talk about maybe if he wants somebody, we're gonna have that be on the personnel committee or the.
Yeah, see there were two that he and I talked about. It was the finance committee and the personnel committee right off.
Oh,
We
see, I don't
also
know
have
what
the
you're talking
capital,
about,
well, it was just what's on your plate, you know, that type of thing. And so the capital and strategic planning committee, that's an important one too. So
But what are they
those
gonna do?
three, good point. That's
I feel like
good
it's
point.
important that the board talks some about. There are things that the whole board is gonna wanna talk about and things that are gonna be delegated
Mhm.
to committees. And we should kind of have I mean, I think maybe we just at the end, we vote on who's on each committee or something. My only point is that I wanna have a chance for us all to talk about the priorities. Dave talks about priorities, things that he's gonna need help from various committees or the board to weigh in on. Then we all get to talk about, you know, what I think education is more of a priority or this or that, and we can kind of divvy things up to the committees a little bit based on a shared understanding of what we all want to work on.
Okay. I get that.
Can we can we have a workshop and vote?
No.
It's not a
No.
meeting.
Okay.
It's not a meeting. That's why I think we are probably going to need to have a conversation for the next meeting and a vote. And I think at the very least, it should be the finance committee and the personnel committee. Those are two very important. And then have conversations about the other committees.
Well, let's just have, the only reason to have a workshop rather than a meeting is there's no rule against discussing and workshopping things in a meeting. So it can just be a meeting with a very light
Yeah. that's what we were
agenda
saying.
that we'll talk about goal setting and then at the end we can vote on committees.
So the next meeting will be a meeting.
Yeah.
Sure. with
Who is to have
light agenda.
It needs to be a meeting to vote.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
All right.
right.
All right.
I just, what
What'd you say?
David expressed to us is that he wanted to keep it light in terms of the putting together of the packet and all of that stuff is time consuming, and there's value in us just being able to discuss things a lot. So I think a light agenda
Yeah,
meeting,
that'll be easy.
a light agenda
It- it-
meeting
it-
with
It will.
most of it consumed by a goal-setting discussion would be a nice
Okay.
compromise. Then if anything else comes up too that needs to be voted on that we're not thinking of right now, that you'll have the freedom to.
Bill, did you have something?
No, I think with the next meetings, we have one agenda item that says discuss and determine which committees are going to be formed. And we'll all vote, and then we'll go into a workshop and discuss who wants to do what.
What
Sounds good to
date
me.
are we talking about?
Usually if it's a November date, we do the third week in November.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, because
Because one's day away from Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
so we bump back a week.
Gosh.
And then I think we skip December generally now, and we go to January.
No one. I guess we do. have-
Okay, so
And
Can we
then
also-
finance.
Wednesday,
the auditor.
the 20th at 6:30 PM.
Yeah, the
We need to
auditor,
get the auditor
Yeah.
started. That's been our big thing with the budget.
yeah,
And
it is. Yeah, I'll talk with Fred Brewer and I'll call him. Yeah.
maybe Beth could just call like every couple days
do
and.
you have anything else with your manager's report?
No, I think,
Did everybody see?
not on the report was, the new newspaper, the
Midcoast
Midcoast Villager. Did you see the article? It was the very first article.
Mhm.
And they were asking me if I had any people that
Yep.
and it would have been Camden, the Public Works, they're all across the board.
Yeah.
And she chose to do Jeff. And
Yep,
I
that
think
was
it was a
great.
really good article.
Mhm.
And it really goes to show how good of a staff we have over there and how good of a job Vinny and Jeff and all of the people at the different places where they're working are doing. Cause I mean, not everybody cares that much. And when you have a person that cares that much, it makes a big difference. And I think they really conveyed that message in that story and, you know,
Running that area the way he does has saved us huge money.
Oh, yeah.
People don't realize
they
it.
don't.
They do not realize it.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as packing up a dumpster and sending it out.
No, no, and there's a lot of cleaning involved. And there's I mean, every one of those containers is gonna be pulled out and picked up after, and he goes up and bangs on them, making sure that they're full, and then he knows what's coming, and he knows he has a little bit in here, and if it's a lot more than that can go in there, he puts half of it in there, and I mean, he doesn't have, I mean, I've seen people not do that. Okay, and they can send those things out 12 tons. And I can tell you that's real money and it adds up fast. When you start counting the hauls,
We're very fortunate.
we are,
We
so
are very-
it's just another acknowledgement of how good of a job Jeff did, how nice it was that he was recognized in the
Yeah.
paper.
They've also been doing the job, and this is really not fun for anybody, of checking receipts and giving everybody their receipt and then checking it. Which isn't enjoyable to confront somebody and say,
It's-
did you, and
Yeah,
going,
like that
he's
woman
really
down by
he does a really good
Small
job.
Shack.
They all do, of kind of trying to be like, hey, sorry to bother you, but just want to make sure that you paid for that. And that I think makes a big difference too.
They're really weaving the thread in the right place. They're not going too far with it, and they're not doing it at all.
Yeah.
Cause that's a sensitive, hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And it can cause people get really, really upset if you do it the wrong way.
Yeah, having to talk to the public all day long. like
It
that.
tickles me when they say, you want a receipt, right?
Yeah.
If we're, really, it tickles me.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
I'm weird, but it's
And
good.
It is, and then we have the job rotation inside the gatehouse, which is going on right now, which is another
Mhm.
uncomfortable thing for
It
people, and they're doing it, and they're okay with it, and. It's something Fred Brewer, the auditor, actually requested that we have, a check and balance in there and a little bit more of a. We're not counting the money all the time, or there's different things we're doing to make sure that we're accountable for what's going on in that, because there's a lot of money that goes through that gatehouse. A lot of money.
like cash.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm.
Before we move on, I just wanted to say thank you so much for that tour. It
Oh,
was
great.
really interesting and really informative.
Right, and if you ever have a question, I'm available anytime, and I can go over anything with you if you wanna know more about it, and so.
Hey, I have one question out of your report. You had mentioned in the report that the recovery well is currently at 95 feet. And my understanding, and this is a question, not a statement, is that the quarry may be as much as 200+ feet deep. So do we have any obligation to DEP to make sure that well is at the bottom? Or is it only that we get the water level pumped down to the 98 feet? I don't think it matters personally. I'm just asking the question whether it does.
I mean, that's a question I haven't been asked for, but I think thinking about it from listening to the geologists, and dealing with another quarry that had the same similar situation over there, it was 45 feet mean sea level. They set the point of where they want you to maintain that at, and that's what they want. That's their main objective, is keeping that water level below a certain mandated benchmark.
Right.
And that, you know, keeping an inward gradient flow so that you don't have, you know, water migrating away is what they want.
Okay.
And as long as we're doing that, I think they're happy with the results. And of course, you know, looking at the hydro report and making sure that inward gradient flow is happening, and we don't have contaminants, you know, that are showing up on the outside, the wells outside. So I think we have,
Yeah, as I mentioned, I don't think technically it's an issue. What I'm just asking is whether or not the DEP said somewhere in writing, yeah, we'll pay for the well as long as you put it at the bottom of the landfill, because it's only about halfway down. I think okay, but I'm just asking.
Yeah,
there's a whole big report about that actually that I was just reading today that I'll send you, Bill. It went through the different places. They did a bunch of testing of where the efficiency of different
wastes probably.
Yeah, and
that's fine, Allison. Again, I'm from a technical perspective, getting that water level at 98. I don't care whether the well's at 95 feet, 120 feet, or 200 feet at the bottom. I'm just
the well's not at 95 feet. The well isn't at 95 feet. What do you mean by 95 feet?
Not 95 feet above sea level. It's 95 feet.
Oh, down.
95 feet from the surface.
Right.
So the other thing too is that, you know, we have the hydrogeologist that we hired to interact with the state geologist before we put that plan together of where the well was gonna go. And they reviewed all of that before we actually did the drilling.
Okay.
The quality gets much worse as you go down.
I'm not disagreeing. It was just a simple question. Are they making us go to the bottom of the landfill or not? And if they're not, then I'm not going to worry about it.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda, I skipped over public director and comments. I think we'll do that last, if everybody's okay with that. Fee schedule update review for fiscal year 24-25.
That was a little confusing to me.
So I can help with that a little bit.
You mean the wording stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was brought up that the batteries, and there were several little things that were requested that we add to the fee schedule, so it wasn't as confusing. Beth did a good job kind of fleshing that out and making it a little more clear. And it was a follow-up action from what was requested of the last meeting.
It was approved in the last,
Yeah.
the money was approved, the fees.
Yeah, so it's just terminology.
Yeah, this is how it looks
Changes.
now, what we hand out to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the alkaline batteries is missing an I.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good catch. Yeah, boy,
And
I'm gonna call you up when I want to have something to do.
I was gonna say over here just fine, but okay, yeah.
yeah, it's, you don't, it's like, is it an L? Is it missing the L or is it missing an I? It's hard to tell on the screen, but it's
I
missing
can't see
something.
it.
I think it's an I.
Yeah, I think it's missing the I. The one thing I was wondering, the mistake that I made was about button batteries. So do we want to say all rechargeable and button batteries? Or is that too confusing? Because otherwise I wouldn't really realize that a button battery isn't an alkaline or zinc carbon, and I would toss it in the regular garbage. And if I saw rechargeable batteries and button batteries, then I would instantly know that that's something that I should hold out in a cup on the dashboard to hand over.
I agree with you, but the lettering on the battery is the key. And a button battery says,
button cell batteries.
they say NiCad or NAIC, or they do say.
Well, then say all rechargeable and NiCad batteries.
Yeah,
No,
No.
hold on, are you getting to, are
No.
you trying to
Are
say
we
that
getting too
there
far in the
are?
weeds?
No, I think he is, but
no, I mean, it's like, do you say it's the,
I'm
do you
pretty
say
sure all
no?
button cell batteries are
Right.
you aware of button cell batteries that are not NiCad?
No. So do we say
So-
NiCad batteries?
Just-
Nobody knows what that
No,
means.
yeah, just say button batteries, and then maybe if there's a down moment between cars and somebody spots one that shouldn't be in, then they can just take it out. Is it too much?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I don't think we are aware that there are any that are.
I don't
Okay,
think, I don't know there's button batteries that aren't.
Are
NiCad.
all
I think they're
button
all-
batteries,
I can check.
But it could be,
batteries?
it could be lithium too, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think they're
Our
NiCad.
only issue is if the company that takes it all doesn't we start to get mass amounts of button cell batteries and they're like, oh, no, you.
Hold on a second.
Lithium batteries are
Um,
dangerous. It's,
Right, but we don't.
not all button batteries are nickel cadmium batteries. They can be alkaline lithium, silver oxide, or zinc air. Let's see, show more.
yeah.
Well, that's the.
But they'll still take them.
We'll just say button batteries, like you said, and if
Yeah,
they're.
right?
I can check with Care to recycle what they like to do with the batteries, and then also I'll check with North Coast, because I know in the past we have given a bunch to North Coast because we weren't putting them in the Care to recycle. I don't know if they'll accept them.
That's
because of
the
the
main issue, what was
variety.
accepted, right?
Yeah. But I'll
But we
double
have
check on
another-
that, and then I'll add it where it belongs.
Okay, thank you.
Are you saying there's another outlet for batteries that we get that don't fall into what's the north, what do you say, north?
North Coast is our other universal waste. They take our TVs and some lamps and bulbs that are commercial.
But we pay for that.
We pay for that. So I'll double
But
check.
probably it's not gonna be like a huge problem with.
No, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I think button
Being
batteries.
picky, I think fluorescent is FLUO, but,
Oh, fluorescent, you're right.
Oh,
With
Fluor.
Where's that?
Both of the fluorescents, just
Are
below
missing a U.
rechargeable batteries.
On the bottom of the left column,
Yeah, he's right, FLU, yeah.
fluor.
It's missing.
Okay,
I probably spelled.
Yeah,
Okay.
because fluorescence will work.
so if we're good with that, let's move on to treasurer report and financial.
I do not have a report. You know, it was,
All this time.
I know, but it's not, most of the time, the treasurer, it isn't something that I kind of started the tradition of having a treasurer's report. No, I don't have anything. My treasurer's report is that we should begin with a plan of harassing the auditor very early because
Let's do it.
We have.
Okay.
Sometimes somebody could drive by his house every so often, you could take turns posting stuff on
Yeah.
Facebook, tagging them, just kidding.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it really is a problem
Let you
because,
take the lead on that.
because then we get to give everybody just the reason Karen was saying we got a finance committee going a little is because the finance committee comes up, works with the manager comes up with a draft budget, finance committee reviews it, makes recommendations and changes, then all of that goes to the board. And technically, according to the interlocal agreement, the board is supposed to vote on and send the approved budget assessment number to the towns by December 31st, which is totally unreasonable. Because a lot of, and it's really left over from the days when Midco Solid Waste, you can read about it in like the early 2000s, late 1990s, the budget was like when the assessments were varying wildly because Midco Solid Waste was in so much debt. And so I think the towns were like, well, we need to know about this way early if we're going to be paying a couple $100,000 extra. Over the past 5 years or so, we've actually had the assessments go down, and then it's been
Steady.
steady. And so there's been some communicating with the towns like, hey, it's gonna be the same. It's gonna be the same number, but the number's gonna come a little bit later. One of the reasons for that is because we don't even get, well, there's the audit, which tells us officially how much we have in our undesignated fund balance and all that stuff, which we, sort of know already. But then, the other thing is even the, what do you call it? The valuation numbers from the towns that change every year, all of that, we haven't even gotten by that deadline. And so it's just, and when you have to budget that far in advance, it's like, it's really hard. So, but we do need to, as Dave Kinney says, what is Dave? It's always better to start early and act like there's take the deadline seriously, but restructuring that interlocal agreement is another goal, I suppose you could say, that we've had for many years to kind of clean some of that language up. So yeah, usually sometimes Midco Solid Waste ends up getting a little bit of the short end of the stick with the towns all get their stuff done sometimes before Midco Solid Waste with the auditors.
So I'll bring a couple of things to your attention, just so I'm gonna preemptively talk about repairs on the roll-off truck and the bulldozer. They're both high. I mean, we're looking good on the overall line at the bottom collectively, but those two things, we had the major repairs that we did when we went to have the inspection done. There's a bunch of things we had to do, and then we just recently had to change the starter. Fortunately, we were able to do that in-house through Camden Public Works, saved a lot of money doing that. But the roll-off truck has been hitting us hard this year for for repairs. And then also the bulldozer, we had a track repair that we had to do up in the landfill, and we had some other mechanical components that we had to fix, joystick and a couple other things. So you don't plan for those things, they happen.
Where is the
So
bulldozer in here?
So if you look
what
at landfill equipment, it's at 100%. We had 7,500 in there. We're at 7,503.
landfill equipment?
Yeah, 35 operational costs for the CNG.
Landfill equipment, got it. Okay.
So just so you know, I mean, that doesn't always happen. But both those pieces of equipment are showing age.
Well, that was gonna be my comment. I was just gonna say, Dave, will we see either or both of these on your projected replacement?
I think that's like one of those things we need to talk about at the next meeting. Yeah.
Most likely before the bulldozer, maybe?
I had some thoughts on that. I mean, we probably could save it for the workshop, but I kind of.
Yep. But I was just gonna make mention of it, that's all.
Yeah, I think there's a way of maybe like, I'm trying to figure out a way of like, we use that roll-off truck, but we don't use it all the time. Anytime you have a piece of equipment, you should be running it all the time. It's not worth owning if you don't run it all the time. And we have some needs at the wastewater treatment facility. So, maybe we can tie in, like we're using Camden to do work at Midcoast, which is a huge savings. And I can use, it doesn't always work out this way, but I can use downtime that I have there over here, and it saves us a lot of money here.
But we pay for that, right?
But we're paying for it, and we're tracking it. I mean, you can ask Beth, we're tracking it, and we bill, but we're billing it.
They're reasonable.
But it's reasonable. It's not as much as it would be if we probably outsourced it. But the same thing could happen for Camden wastewater. If we theoretically were we only haul a load a week. If we took that roll-off truck, we made a capital investment, and I don't know.
You mean to take the sludge to the sludge that can't.
So we would take that to, and maybe they can pay for a portion of it. Maybe, there's some creative things we can do there to help soften those costs.
I get it.
One of the
But
things.
that'll be good for us, that'll be good for our workshop.
Exactly.
I mean, I like the global thinking because one of the things we've been talking about a lot out in Hope is how hammered the town is getting because our only source of revenue is property taxes. And it's unsustainable. And, you know, regionalization is the way to go, and Camden's the logical hub. And Midcoast Solid Waste is one of the few sort of consortium groups to deal with public services. And, you know, maybe it can be a useful example and model for what we're possibly going to have to start thinking about in terms of ambulance services and fires, you know, public safety, because the costs are just horrific.
Oh, yeah.
And 90% of the town budget is out of our control. It's the school and state and county taxes.
Mhm.
And so no matter how hard we squeeze the nickel, if you know, you can squeeze a nickel and you've got several $100s of other expenses, it doesn't make any difference.
Mhm.
So, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
it's
I think that's been a good thing with, it's like there, we do a lot of talking about like, oh, we gotta all work together but in practice that, like sometimes people will use Midcoast Solid Waste as an example of the ambulance and how we could do ambulances. And in the past I've said, Midcoast Solid Waste is a mess. It has been in the past when it's been like we have representatives from all these towns, but all of our employees are 100% Midcoast Solid Waste. So we're not really sharing resources. We're just kind of sharing, we had been just kind of sharing power in a way that was, and for the first time I've actually seen, and I actually was opposed to this at the beginning, having a part-time Midcoast Solid Waste manager not that I was opposed to Dave, but I was always like, Midcoast Solid Waste is so important that we need, you know, our own person, and I don't want to share with Camden, but it's actually allowed us to truly share services and make use of equipment that Camden already has, or somebody asked me the other day where all the stuff all that dirt from the tannery went. Like that went to the landfill, right?
Mhm.
But that was because there are times when we can do things when the landfill needs this type of material, and if you don't have somebody that's kind of seeing it all, there was one other time we tried to take landfill like dredge spoils from somewhere else or different material at a different fee, and it was like it required a board meeting and all of this stuff to talk about it, and there's a lot to be gained when you can actually like share people a little bit, but it has to be the right person.
You have to have the right people.
That's it, because it can go.
You do, you do.
The
You have to have
equipment,
the understanding on both sides.
the
Right.
equipment the equipment repair is one of the biggest things, because
Right.
that cost that you get from breakdowns, and when you bring it to the garage, I mean, for that bigger equipment, it is expensive.
like the fire trucks.
Right, and you know, not everything we can help with, but the stuff we can adds up really quick.
It does.
Like the welding and all that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the little stuff, there's still stuff we can't do, but you know, if we do 50% of it, let's say, that's a
It's a
lot.
huge
That's
savings.
huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I asked Vinny if he thought it was helpful, and because, you know, Vinny sees it,
Oh, yeah.
like, you know, in real time, and he's like, oh my God, he goes, you don't even know how much, because it's frustrating too, because they don't respond, like, we can help them right off a lot of times. And other times he has to wait, or he has
Yeah,
to,
if you're counting on a vendor,
you know.
you're
Yeah.
3 weeks out, maybe,
Yeah.
if they feel like, yeah, I mean,
We get some
it's-
pretty good
it's ridiculous.
service, but still, you know, not
Understood.
everybody responds that way.
It
It's
does
helpful.
benefit Camden too, that's what I say when.
You know,
start to get-
I have pretty good luck where I work with the local people when I need help.
Mhm.
It's New Hampshire and Vermont and Freeport that is 3 weeks out, 2-3 weeks
Yeah,
out.
you
know.
start on travel time.
Yeah, and it is just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. Anyway, okay, so we're good. Any other questions Beth, do you have anything on financials that you might like to say? Everything good?
I made calls on last week. I'll be billing again, so I've got, pretty much everything's in here. I have a few deposits that aren't showing in here that I've done last week that were pretty large at the end of the month, so
Okay.
I'm probably looking a little better than it looks,
Okay.
but not too many late accounts.
Yeah, there's one that I noticed that seems to be chronic. But
There's a couple.
yeah, well, chronic with larger dollar amounts than the others, but,
Okay. But I do have to call sometimes.
okay. And the others, it was, anything that's like current to 30 to 45 days, it's like, it's just, waiting for the check to show up, I hope.
Yeah, a lot of people are very busy all year. Now they're starting to catch up on their billing. A lot of times checks will come in at the end of the season.
Okay.
The accounts receivable aging summary starts with the letter G. There's nothing before G.
I've got it.
I don't.
Oh. 4 pages.
Yeah,
Oh, it
that's
starts on page 2 of 4.
on the PDF.
That's
Just
on
on
the
the hard
paper,
copy.
on the hard copy. The digital copy has page 1.
Yeah.
I can look at it on my
Yeah,
computer at home.
That's the one that I was talking about.
Right.
Well, it might have got stuck. Yeah.
And
Together.
then,
No, there's a whole A through.
yeah, and then,
Okay, so we'll circle back around to what was item number 2. It became item number 3, and then I skipped it, so it's now item number, yeah,
whatever.
6. Public and director comments. Bill, you up there? You got anything to say? Nothing? Nothing constructive? Things, yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry to bother you. Anybody else? The only thing I'd like to say is, Dave, thank you for the tour.
Mhm.
As long as I've been doing this, always learn more. There's stuff and it's fascinating.
Yeah,
And the people that we've got working over there,
we're lucky.
we are lucky. They do a great job.
The only thing I was gonna say is, and maybe we can leave this for the goal setting workshop, but one committee that we don't have is a recycling committee or a sustainability or education committee or so that's sort of the type of comment that I get the most from people, like, do you have a more information on how to recycle? A lot more people are moving here and having to adapt to our recycling system.
Mhm.
I'm getting a lot of comments lately from people that are like another round of appeals to go to zero sort recycling. And, we've definitely looked at that a lot in the past, and it's just incredibly expensive. I think it would be nice to have a group of us that might be interested in it, look at some of those issues that are coming up in the community and kind of coming up with an updated position on it. So we're all on the same page, like we're doing this kind of recycling because of this, or, these would be our options. We could try to do this, but it would cost us, this much. And there was this group called Waste Watch, which was back when I wasn't on the board. A bunch of us would get together and come up with things like this. And then we made labels too, and different stuff like that. So I didn't know if there is any interest from the board or members of the board and kind of looking at some of those issues, having a little subcommittee that would.
We want to have this as one of our topics.
Sure.
At our meeting /
oh yeah, and then I was just
workshop.
gonna pass out legal, maybe over these, see if these are useful to anybody. This is one thing I don't think has been on the website at all, but when we did this, we made the label, so you can kind of have like in your house, you can have this, and then you have the corresponding labels that you can put on the bins. So like in my house, I combine, because I know you can see what the order is, like, so when you're gonna go to the transfer station, you're gonna know that like the mixed paper and the newspaper are next to each other, and then you can put the same label on the, you know, 2 labels on the same bin if you want to, or, but we can make, I brought copies for everybody, but, yeah, that's my report.
Well, we talked at the tour too about an education component and doing more with education. And I would love to be reaching out to our local school systems and getting some kind of modules in the schools. We need our kids to start getting their parents on board.
Yeah.
Right.
You're gonna give me the blank one, aren't you?
You might not have a full set of labels here.
Yeah, presentation paper versus plain paper.
Apparently a lot of the same.
We just have bins.
Is that the same?
Yeah.
That all says the same thing, right?
All good.
Two.
All right, well, you'll have to wait for next time for your page 2 of the label.
I made, we
You can
actually
start recycling
sort
half.
our recyclables.
You can focus on those items for now.
Okay, yeah, well, it'll take me a little while to digest this anyway.
I can't wait for your comments.
Okay, yeah, I'll mark that up. and get that
All right,
back
move
to
to adjourn.
you. Okay, I'll take a final motion.
I just moved.
Second.
Well, so moved and seconded.
All those.
Any? Okay, all those in favor?
Hey, Bill, have a great vacation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm not vacationing. I'm helping my daughter move her apartment, so it's not a big.
Well, thanks for making time for us. I'm like,
Thanks for showing up.
All right, see you
Good
guys.
questions, by the way.
That would kill me if my husband.
I'll try to keep it short next
Bad
time.
enough. Yeah.
No, they're good questions.
Good. Things are good.
No, it's great not to be the only one. Well,
Hey, shut that thing off. Or say something I'm not supposed to.
See you later.
See you, Bill.
Here I am waving at the TV and I should be waving at the owl.
Presentation.
Oh, is this it?
Yeah, I've had.
you got a couple of those that you.
That talked about, what PFAS are, and I didn't know if maybe board members might like that, just to have a concept of what they are.
Yeah, I mean, we can pass it out.
I mean, they talked about a lot of things in it, and it's just their presentation on, a video of their presentation, but had a lot of information.
You mean the thing that we went to when they went through the whole,
3 years ago, yeah.
yeah, that was a long,
Which that power, that might be,
yeah,
I can't even, I haven't gotten to watch them.
that was pretty technical.
Yeah, but it's what it is, right?
Mm,
Might be like, it might be like a short YouTube video, might be more, you can find like.
You know what was
Oh, Super
super,
Bowl?
We need like a reel, like 90 seconds or less.
you know what was super interesting about it? What he was telling me is that the